Hey everyone, I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for tuning in to this really exciting episode. I wanted to let you know that when Arielle and I spoke all about preparing for college and the new landscape of college admissions these days, we had so much to talk about. And so this episode is actually going to be part one of our conversation. And so I hope that you will stay tuned. In a couple weeks, we will release part two so that you can hear all of the other wonderful things that we're going to talk about. But I just wanted to let you know that this is half of our conversation because we just had so much to cover and the content was so good. I didn't want to cut it out. So, part one today. Stick around in a couple weeks. We'll release part two and can't wait to hear what you think. All right, here we go. Hey there, and welcome back to the Education Breakdown. Here on the Education Breakdown, we primarily focus on education related to the K through 12 experience. We seek to answer questions like, what do our children really need in order to be successful? But for most of us, our dreams for our child's education doesn't abruptly stop at 12th grade. And so today we are looking forward a little bit into the world of college preparation and college planning. So today I am joined by Arielle Villanueva, who has been in the college admissions world for over 10 years now, and she is the owner of Third Dot College Planning. So I'm going to turn it over to Arielle, and if you will just introduce yourself to us, tell us a little bit about your background in education and college admissions, and then really what led you to found Third Dot College Planning.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm really excited to have this conversation today, too. When I was thinking back to my experience in admissions, it's actually started in a really crazy way. I went on a campus tour and afterwards went to the admissions office, and in having a conversation with their director, before even deciding about the university that I was going to attend, they said, when you get here on campus, you need to apply for a job. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, you're great. We need you in the office. And I was like, sure. So, of course, I get on campus. It's like 2 weeks in, and I call my mom on one of my walks to class. And she's like, you got to go by the admissions office and get a job. Remember, they said, like, go and apply. So I have been working in college admissions since my freshman year of college. I've done a lot of different things, given campus tours, made phone calls, written postcards, everything on the undergrad side. And then I worked full time in the admissions office as an admissions counselor while I attended grad school for higher education student affairs. So I have started and continued this career in admissions, and I've loved it ever since. I worked at two different institutions, most recently at UNC Chapel Hill, and enjoyed so much of my time on campus interacting with prospective students and families, talking about the admissions process and reading applications. And it's been really exciting work. And now on the college planning side, I've had the opportunity for exponentially, like, way more conversations about the application itself. And when it came down to it, creating Third Dot just made sense. I saw this, I almost say, like, difference, right, in the application of a student who really knew what the admissions office was looking for to the student who, like, rushed, maybe put it together, maybe didn't have the guidance, support, resources to understand what we were looking for in the admissions process. So now I support families in helping them really get a sense of what the admissions office is looking for, and then putting that information together in, like, a full package, not just like one component of the application.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I love that story that you started as a freshman in
Yes.
undergrad. That's amazing.
Yes.
Um, and so it sounds like for a lot of your career, you were working as like on the admissions side, reading applications, making decisions, and now you work kind of on the other side of that, helping families prepare and plan for and walking them along the process of actually applying to schools. Is that right?
Yes. So after reading applications, after looking over scholarship applications, lots of different scholarships over the years, and also reading tons of essays. I mean, from every topic you can imagine, I find so much joy now in helping families find their college fit and really build a list of schools that make a lot of sense for them academically, socially, financially, and then also putting together their application. What does that look like? What are the components that they are going to share with the admissions office, and helping the student figure those things out? It's not just like, hey, this is, what I'm going to throw together for my application, but how do you share who you are and give an authentic approach to the admissions process, especially, and we'll probably talk about it, right, is how quickly an application is read. We
Mm,
only have a certain amount of time, and the admissions office only knows what we share with them. So for students, if they're thinking, okay, I've got to write this essay about this one topic, I'm trying to help students infuse who they are through the whole application and not just specifically focus on one area.
okay. Wow, I never really thought about the time, the limited amount of time that your application might be in someone's hands or, in front of their eyes. So that I'm excited to get to that point. So
Yeah.
I want to talk about how the landscape has changed. I think for a lot of parents who are listening to this podcast, they went through college or the application process 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And the experience that their kids are going to have now or in the, soon future, I think is going to be very different from what maybe we remember. So before we get into specifics, I'm wondering if you can give us a broad picture of how the college admissions landscape has shifted, and then kind of what are those big structural changes perhaps that parents might need to wrap their head around first, before we kind of dive in.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, too, for our local families, they'll appreciate this. 2 years ago, when we were looking up some data in the college admissions world, it was found that the acceptance rate at NC State, North Carolina State University in Raleigh, at the time, 2 years ago, the acceptance rate is what the acceptance rate was at Brown University in 1999. Now, you
Wow.
might be thinking, well, 1999, that was a really long time ago. Brown is an Ivy League institution, and NC State is a state institution in North Carolina.
My gosh.
We're talking about a landscape that has significantly become more competitive in the fact that it's not like there's more institutions, right, than the parents
Hmm.
had available to them. There's roughly, 4,000 institutions across the US alone. That doesn't count
Hmm.
international. And a lot of my students get to explore international schools if that's something that they're looking to. But overall, the factors in admissions have changed and the materials have changed. So, if you're a parent listening right now, you might be familiar with a paper application that either was sent to your house from the school, or locally in your community, they offered paper applications, right? Schools used to send them to high schools, and you can go to your guidance counselor, name those what they were called at the time, and you could pick up your paper application and you'd fill it out, and maybe there was some type of response that you had to share, and you'd turn it in, right? And over the years, that developed into sharing the activities that you do, writing an essay, and where it's really come to today, I would say over the past, we'll say 10 years, and there's a
Okay.
caveat over the last few, but over the past 10 years, we've moved from paper to these digital applications that now, with technology, there's an ability to add more information,
Mm.
right? So, okay, you're going to spend all this time writing. Well, now you're putting this information in on either the school specific application or common application, coalition application. There's things included like your activity list. which some people like to refer to as a resume. There's a defined amount of information you can put in there. There's an additional information section to provide context to the school. If there's something that is not included in another part of the application, you can put it there. And then the essays. And that's a unique one too, because the essay previously was just like a one prompt, right?
Hmm.
I think when I applied to college, it was like, tell us a challenge you faced in your life.
Yeah.
And for some students, that's really boxy, right? So the application essay process, they tried to expand upon it. So they're offering multiple prompts now.
Mm.
And that leaves students questioning, well, which prompt should I pick, right?
Okay.
Letters of recommendation. This kind of goes back and forth, right? There was a big push for all of these letters of recommendation. Now we're seeing colleges pull back a little bit. Maybe it's just one academic teacher, like a core teacher, or
Okay.
some schools want it from a supervisor or a community leader, someone that can speak to who you are outside of the classroom. And then test scores, which we saw a shift happen with COVID. And we're seeing a shift now, right, in 2026, where a lot of schools are going back to testing.
Okay.
And I think over the years, one thing has remained true in college admissions. Well, two things really. And I like to share this with my families. At the end of the day, a college is a business,
Mm.
right? They are making business decisions that feel ultra personal, right? For some families, especially my families who parents did not attend college, or they're seeking out a college that is more rigorous academically or more competitive, it becomes
Hmm.
this pressure cooker. And what remains true though in that is that the admissions office is a business, and at the same time they are trying to build a cohort of students based off of one application that sometimes is read in less than 7 minutes. I mean, that is
Wow.
really hard to put it all out there when you're going to get a quick glance. And I say 7 minutes, and some people might be listening and going, wow, that's really fast. Some schools are
Hmm.
7. Some institutions have maybe less applications or more staff. So maybe they are reading 10 minutes, 15, 20. I would say more than 20 is a luxury.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So overall, all of those factors that come into the admissions process make it just different. And schools are becoming more selective because students, as they would, are talking to each other now. We're seeing social media play a factor in admissions. Parents are talking, well, where is your kid going? We're seeing students branch out into different states. So students are applying to more universities.
Okay. All right, so 7 minutes, that's the number we were all wondering about. I mean, I feel the pressure just hearing that of like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, how would I let someone know who I am and all the things about me? We're all multifaceted people in 7 minutes. That's hard, but that's why we have people like you because you know how to do that. So,
Yes.
oh my gosh. Okay, so let's shift into a little bit more of kind of the logistics, and we're going to get into more details now. So we kind of understand, all right, things have really changed at a high level. So we'll get into the nitty-gritty. Um, One question that I hear a lot from parents of middle schoolers and early high schoolers, so maybe ninth grade or so, is when should we start thinking about and preparing for college applications? Now, I think we all know that 11th grade is probably the most important time where things are actually happening. But what should people be doing, if anything? Maybe they shouldn't. While thinking about seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade. Help us understand, in your opinion, where parents' heads should be around those times.
Yeah, this is a popular question, and I think it resonates back to what our hope is for our children, right? As a parent myself, There is an aspect of you want to stay in the moment and soak up every minute, right? I was like hugging my son the other night and just like in my brain saying, soon I'm not going to be able to lift you up anymore, right? We want to cherish that moment, but we're also thinking ahead. And I would say most parents have these dreams or hopes for their student, their kid, right? Whether that is, a specific thing or if it's just overall having a better life, right? What this word, better. Um, and for some families, that means attending college. And if that is the path that you're looking for your student, it depends on what your hopes are. And that's really hard to understand as a seventh or eighth grader because I think everyone's in this system, right? This school system where it's like, okay, I go to elementary school and then I go to middle school and then I go to high school. And then naturally, I go to college. And for some of my students, that path has led them that way. And I've had a handful that said, you know what, I want to take a different path. And that's okay too. When we're thinking about how to prepare early on, for families, I think it's having those conversations, right? If we talk about it more locally in the Research Triangle area,
Mhm.
we are fortunate enough to live by a lot of universities. So students might have experience like attending a game at one of those schools or having a neighbor that attends that school. When I think more broadly on the mainstream, right? Students really, their impression of college might be where their parents attended, or if they're watching TV, right? Oh, the national football game is on, or, March Madness. Oh,
Mhm.
we do this with our kids. Like, let's do a bracket. And they're like, oh, I just want to pick it based on the mascots,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But that adds a value of exploration early on in the process. I do feel like it's important to mention that as a family, if and this has happened, right? If your family is feeling like your hopes or you feel aligned that you want to support your student in attending a more rigorously competitive school, I do think that process starts a little earlier. And that's where it's like, well, how do I know that? I think a good starting point is having conversations with your student and with teachers, right? If you feel like your student academically is doing well in their classes, they're being, offered, maybe it's a like higher level course, or they're interested in pursuing more advanced courses or things. That's where I think it comes into play when we're thinking about those competitive schools, right? I'm not just going to say the Ivies anymore, right? That I think we're putting the Ivies in a place on a pedestal, but there are a lot of competitive institutions that don't fit into that Ivy category,
Mhm.
that are very just really difficult to gain acceptance to. So early on in the process, talking with students about exploring what do they think happens in college, right? What are the subjects that they like in school now? If it's a kid, especially in eighth grade, I'm talking with those students about what subject do you like? When we pick your classes for ninth grade, what are you most excited about?
Mm.
You're really excited about that history class? Awesome. Let's dig into that and see if there's opportunities to explore that, not just in the classroom space, but outside. So
Okay.
a lot of it does start early on.
Okay. All right. So I'm sure there is such thing as too early, but in this case, seventh grade, eighth grade, I like the way you phrased it though, of like just having conversations and just starting to talk about college and what you think about college and what your ideas are, and getting that information from teachers too seems like a really important aspect too of like, okay, we're seeing a lot of potential here. We're seeing, interest from the child, and putting that all together to kind of help you inform, what time frame you should be on as a family.
Yeah, and I will say too, like that is for a student who's looking at a more highly competitive school, right?
Mhm.
Typical students are starting this exploration in 10th grade.
Okay.
You mentioned 11th, and although 11th is a great time and it's a very compacted time, I'll say,
Hmm. Hmm.
11th grade involves a lot of the pieces that I do with my students that are actually like in advance of their application. So when my students are submitting their applications that are due the fall of their senior year, all of those components are being done in 11th grade. So I'm not here to say 11th grade is too late. Absolutely not. It just depends on what's important for your family
Mhm.
and the types of schools that your family, the student is interested in applying to. Most of my students are in ninth and 10th grade exploring, learning about majors, learning about careers, trying new clubs, trying different classes out. We get to have that exploration. Whereas by the time we get to 11th grade, we're now really doing the work.
Yeah.
So that's something that I want to share too. Like, I don't want families leaving this like, oh my gosh, we're behind because they have a
Mhm.
10th grader. No, you're in the sweet spot. And if there's families right now that your 10th grader is sunsetting on that year and 11th grade is on the horizon, now is a great time to start because it pulls back on that pressure cooker mentality at
Mm.
the start of senior year.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I think there's also a lot of anxiety around what you called the resume, or what some people call that
Yeah.
the resume. So the sports and the clubs and the volunteer hours. And I think a lot of parents hold a lot of this anxiety, sometimes more than the children do. But wanting to make
Yes.
sure we're choosing the right things, all these extracurricular things, what should we be choosing? So my question to you is, what do admissions officers actually care about when they're looking at students' activities and involvement?
Yes, this is such a good question. I can see where the idea of I need to be involved in all these things because it looks good comes from. I like to call that collecting. And I use this like specific feeling of like, I'm going to collect all of these things because they're for someone else.
Mm.
And I think it comes back to the meaningful commitment that your student gets to choose. I mean, think back, right? As parents, high school for some of us was a formative 4 years. It goes by really fast. And I want my students to feel like they can take ownership of the things that they do, not, hey, I really think you should sign up for this club because it's going to look really good. Now, there are people out there that might say that. That's just not my approach. My approach is really focused on being authentic and intentional. And that might look like with a ninth grade student saying, hey, let's look at the list of clubs and figure out which one's most exciting to you. And they might come back a month later and say, I went to that club meeting and it is not for me. And I'm like, okay, we'll drop it. Let's try something else. That's an opportunity when you have that much time, right? To say, let's try this, let's try this. Let's then build on those things. So if you find the activity that you like, over time, how can you build your meaningful commitment to it? There is not one specific or multiple things, right? That it's like if you have this, this, and this, you have a high chance.
Right.
It's not how it works, right? During my time working at UNC Chapel Hill, we used to use the phrase of like building a 3D model of a student.
Okay.
And how can that student flourish on Chapel Hill's campus, right? So when we're thinking about from an admissions perspective, the academic rigor of a school and the community of the school, how will that student fit in? At the end of the day, admissions offices want students to succeed. They
Hmm.
want them to persist and graduate, right?
Yeah.
So when they're building that sense of community, there isn't like this checkbox of like, great, that kid did DECA, or awesome, they attended NHS meetings. It comes down to what is the student interested in that like makes sense for them. That there's a through line, whether it's art or sports or science. Like when you read an application and think about it, if admissions offices are spending, we'll say 7 to 10 minutes,
Hmm.
they're reading they're reading a lot of applications. So if they're spending that much time, they're familiar with what an application activities list looks like. So they can start to see, oh, well, this is kind of random. Why did that student do that thing?
Hmm.
And the description of what you share about the activity is context to the application reader. So when I'm working with students about activities, lots of questions to learn about them, but also exploring and trying to figure out what is the path forward, right? What are you planning that you want to do with this next year? Do you want to keep doing it? Do you want to try something new? There is not this like perfect application activity list.
Right.
But I will say that one thing that stands out is when students are doing something that's meaningful to them, it comes through.
Mm.
I had a student recently, family actually too, say, hey, should we start looking at sports? And I was like, oh, sure. It's a 10th grader. And I said, okay, do you play? I looked at the student, do you play a sport? No. Have you ever played a sport? No. But the tennis team, I think it was tennis, right? The tennis team is having tryouts. And I was like, do you pause? Do you want to try out for the tennis team? Like, is that interesting to you?
Hmm.
And they were like, oh, no, we just thought it would look good in
Uh,
the application. And that's what that collecting is, right?
yeah.
I don't want students to feel like they have to do something. And I think this leads to this idea, too, that like your success is defined by the college that you attend,
Hmm.
right? I think there's an aspect of that that can be really hard to swallow when you're in your high school and that's all that everyone's talking about,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And that's the next thing. You go to elementary school, you go to middle school, you go to high school, you go to college.
Yep.
So, yes, hopefully that helps kind of understand the activities. I want students to do the things that they want to do and explore and try new things and let things go and bring new things on and challenge themselves.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That from an admission standpoint, like you said, you could see those things shine through where they were meaningful commitments, not just the collecting of things. Like
Yes.
it makes sense that you could see that and feel that of, wow, this is a real passion of yours. Look at all the different ways that you followed that passion. And so I think that's a really good reminder for people when they're thinking about, should we try out for tennis? Maybe maybe this should be good. Maybe that's good. It's like, well, is that what you want to do?
Right. And is that what your student wants to do?
Right.
Sometimes that can be the disconnect too. Is like the parents are like, you should do this because it's going to look good. It's coming back to the student and saying like, is that something you want to try? Maybe you give it a try and you realize you don't like it, and that's okay too.
Yeah. So this leads me to my next question, which is about kind of the responsibilities that parents take on in this process and the responsibilities that are the students. Because I think that, like I mentioned before, I think a lot of parents shoulder this kind of burden or anxiety
Yes.
about making sure we're doing all the things and are you joining the right clubs or whatever. Like you said, the family who was like, we just thought tennis would be good. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So, what trends do you see, or maybe what sort of advice do you have for parents who are listening to this about what their role is in this process and what you really think is the student's role and the student's responsibility in this process?
Yes, you are completely right, Sarah. There is so much pressure that we as parents carry. And I don't think it's just college related. It's all of the things, right? It's like, oh, I got to fill out that form and I've got to get this done and they're signed up for that. And do I have enough things for this kid to do over the summer? It's this constant like go motion. Also, I find at times that we get stuck in this comparison trap and it's not like it's new in high school, right? This is from the moment that our kids are, oh, well, they started walking at this age. Well, they started talking at this age. Are you potty trained yet? Did you get into that school? And social media, I mean, exposes it in a whole new light,
Hmm.
right? Um, we kind of get lost in that sometimes. And I think from a parent perspective, and I myself, there are moments where we have to like pause and say, is this actually make sense for my student? Does my kid, is my kid interested in this? Does my kid even want to do this thing, right? Summer camp is a big conversation in our house right now. Well, I want to go to this summer camp and I want this and I wanted to try this. And there are times where I'm just like, shoot, these are the days and time and the cost that just makes sense for you to go here and you to go here. right? My kids are young, but also having the conversation early on. It's like, hey, do you want to do that basketball camp? Your option this week could be to go to this basketball camp or to this, play camp. Which
Mhm.
one do you want to do? And at an age where we have children at home, right? 15, 16, 17, we want to give options, but we also want to help support and guide with our wisdom and our lived experience as parents too. And where I see the admissions process kind of changing that path is that um, from a context standpoint, parents only know what they've experienced, right? Their
Mhm.
college application process and what they hear. And students only know what their parents are telling them or they're hearing from teachers.
Mhm.
And it makes a lot of sense. As it relates to how parents can support their students, I think it goes back to listening and exploring. Like, can you have that be something you do together? Whether it's go on a college visit or just talk about college, even parents talking about their own experience if they attended college. Um, One thing that comes up a lot with my students is they don't know what their parents do for work. So in the application with my 11th graders, so they're filling it out in 11th grade before they apply in 12th grade, there's a question about parents' occupation. And I'll say, well, what do your parents do? They're like, they work for like a business. Like they work in a hospital. They work for like their friend. And I'm like, what do they do? I think sometimes we get so sidetracked with things that we don't actually talk about our own experiences with our kids. Oh, I went to school for this and I majored in this. Maybe my first job was this, but then it changed to that. And the exploration of that can be really helpful. Now, I say all of that with the caveat that the parent involvement should be. I mean, it's part of a family decision, especially from the financial standpoint,
Mhm.
but there is a aspect of ownership that we want students to take. So I'm really clear with my families to say, like, this is a life skill that your student has the opportunity to fill out these forms on their own, to write their own essays, to sit down and talk with an adult and explore things and research things on their own and think about things in a different way. And we should give them the opportunity to do that.
Mhm.
And that sometimes can be hard because we want to, there's this, kind of approach where like you want parents in, but not too much, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that it comes down to at the end of the day, parents just want their kids to do well and be successful in whatever that looks like in their life, whether that's through their happiness or the joy that they find. And I'm here for all of that. I'm like, let's get together as a family and make sure we map this out. And also, I want your student to understand that the expectation is the student fills out the application. I mean, they're signing an honor code when they submit that everything that they share is truthful and their own work. And
Mhm.
sure, we can go down the path of AI, but I'm speaking to the parents too, right? That's their
Mhm.
own work, right?
Mhm.
I've had parents before say, well, I'll just fill out the personal information for them because they don't know it. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. No, I want them to come and ask you.
Mhm.
I want
Mhm.
them to ask you, where did you go to school? What This is all in the application, right? Where did you attend school? What degrees do you have? What is your occupation? If they have siblings, what year did they, parents and siblings, what year did their sibling graduate? Let them go and ask that. And that's hard, right? It's hard to like put it down. We want to help and step in. And this is their time to start building those life skills, talking to an
Mhm.
adult, filling out things, putting their own information down. We all want that autonomy for our kids in the future. So we have to start building the foundation for it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you
Yeah.
100%.